Graduation morning should have felt like the sunrise after a long winter, warm, hopeful, full of the promise that maybe, finally, I'd done something right. Instead, it began with the vibration of my phone on the nightstand, a tiny buzz that would split my entire world open. 7:42 a.m. A familiar name on the screen. Dad. For one suspended heartbeat, I let myself hope, maybe a congratulations, or at least a neutral see you there. Something human. Something fatherly. I unlocked my phone. Dad. Don't expect help. You're on your own. 10 words. No emotion. No respect. No space for interpretation. I read it again. And again. And again, until the letters smeared into meaningless shapes and the meaning dug deeper into my chest. No one else in the room heard the message, or the silence afterward, but I swear the air shifted around me. Like the universe exhaled on my behalf, as if to say, here it is. The last cut. Are you ready? The worst part wasn't the cruelty. It was how unsurprising it felt. Dad had always been like this, cold, exacting, allergic to softness. When I was 7 and brought home a drawing, he'd told me, art won't feed you. Work harder. When I was 13 and crying over a teacher who mocked my stutter, he reminded me, life doesn't tolerate weak people. Every milestone, every achievement, he treated like a receipt I hadn't fully earned. But somehow, I still held on to a tiny, naive shard of hope that today, of all days, he'd show me something different. Something gentle. A flicker of pride, even if he tried to hide it. Instead, I got a verbal eviction notice from his version of love. I sank down on the edge of my bed, cap and gown draped across my lap like fabric meant for someone else. Sunlight spilled through the blinds, warm and soft, so painfully opposite of the cold blooming in my chest. My roommate, Lucia, poked her head in the door, carrying a bouquet from her parents. You ready? She asked, smiling so brightly I had to force one onto my own face. Yeah, I lied. Just, morning nerves. She nodded and rushed back into the hallway, her laughter joining the chorus of excited voices from graduates and their beaming families. Families. The word pressed against my ribs. Dad was coming. Of course he was coming. Not for me, never for me, but to uphold the image of a stern father guiding his daughter into adulthood. A silent spectator claiming credit for a job he'd never done. I looked back down at the message. You're on your own. Maybe he thought those words would scare me into obedience. Maybe he thought they'd shrink me into something small enough to fold back into his expectations. But instead, something inside me hardened. Quietly. Cleanly. Like stone being born under pressure. Fine, I whispered into the empty room. My voice didn't shake. Then watch me. Because he didn't know, not yet, about the company I had built in secret. The team depending on me. The billion-dollar storm gathering beneath his radar. He thought he was warning me. But what he really sent was the last push I needed. The last straw. The last bruise. The last time his words would define me. Today, I decided, would be the day he lost his power over me, long before he realized it. If chapter 1 of my life was defined by my father's doubt, then what followed was defined entirely by the fire his doubt ignited. My startup, Nova Bridge, didn't begin as a startup at all. It began as a frustration, a helpless, burning frustration. I was 18, standing in the hallway of my high school guidance office, listening to a kid named Jordan argue with the counselor about why he couldn't afford the college that had accepted him. He had the grades. He had the talent. He just didn't have the money or the connections. I watched him leave that office with his shoulders folded inward, like dreams were too heavy for him to carry alone. That image never left me. So during my first year of college, while other freshmen were falling in love, studying abroad, joining sororities, or partying until sunrise, I sat in the back corner of the campus cafe with my aging laptop and a notebook full of angry, relentless ideas. A platform. A bridge. Something that could connect kids like Jordan to mentors, micro-scholarships, and opportunities through an algorithm that actually understood their needs, not just their test scores. I didn't know it would grow into a tech giant. I just knew it had to exist. By sophomore year, I had a name, Nova Bridge. Symbolizing a new beginning, light after darkness. By junior year, I had a team. There was Liam, my CTO, a coding prodigy who lived on black coffee, neon energy drinks, and the belief that anything was possible at 4 a.m. He joined me after reading my draft proposal and saying, "This is insane. I love it." Then came Zoe, our UX designer with a laugh that kept the team from collapsing. And Aaron, our data scientist who treated algorithms like poetry. And finally, sweet, brilliant Elena, the finance brain behind our future IPO, who kept us alive when our bank accounts begged to differ. We were a mismatched, overworked, sleep-deprived family built on hope and cheap ramen. No one outside that cramped workspace knew what we were building. Least of all my father. He would have laughed in my face if I had told him. He would have listed the million reasons I'd fail before he let me finish my sentence. So I didn't tell him. And the silence tasted like freedom. We worked through nights that stretched into mornings. We celebrated the small wins, our first investor call, our first prototype, the first time the matching algorithm successfully paired a student with a mentor who later emailed us crying gratitude. The world didn't see those moments. But they built me more surely than any lecture my father ever gave. By senior year, something unbelievable happened. Investors started calling us. Not the other way around. We were being whispered about in circles far above our pay grade. Tech journalists had gotten hints. Universities asked for demos. Government agencies wanted meetings. And through it all, I told Dad nothing. Not because I wanted to hide. But because some things bloom better in the dark, away from the cold hands that would crush them too soon. Nova Bridge grew like a storm, gathering momentum, gathering eyes, gathering power. And with every line of code, every exhausted pizza-fueled night, I felt myself becoming someone stronger, sharper, more certain. The kind of woman who didn't need her father's approval. The kind of woman he wouldn't recognize. The kind of woman about to take the world by surprise. Dad thought he knew who I was. But the girl he dismissed was building an empire right under his nose. And soon, the entire world, not just him, would see it. Graduation day always feels like a movie, caps tossed into the air, proud parents crying, sunlight catching the edges of a sparkling future. But my movie had always been a bit different. There was no soft nostalgia, no warm embrace waiting at the end of the ceremony. Just my father's stiff posture and a decade of invisible bruises between us. The university gym buzzed with life, families waving signs, students posing for photos, little siblings running between folding chairs. I walked in with my shoulders squared, the sleeves of my gown suddenly too heavy. Dad followed me a few steps behind, his shoes clicking sharply on the polished floor, echoing like distant gunshots. He didn't say much. He never did in public. Only a curt, "Don't slouch," as if my posture could tarnish his reputation. I stood with my row as the ceremony began, the dean droning on about perseverance and resilience, qualities I had earned the hard way. For a moment, I let myself imagine a different version of this day. One where my father smiled. One where he clapped. One where his text message that morning didn't linger like a cold hand on my throat. But life rarely grants us the fantasies we script. About halfway through the speeches, a ripple of noise passed through the audience, phones buzzing, whispers rising like a tide. At first, I ignored it. People get bored, they check messages, the world goes on. But then my own phone began vibrating, again and again, buzzing against my leg like it was trying to leap out of my pocket. I discreetly pulled it out. "CFO Elena, call me now. Emergency." My stomach tightened. Elena never used words lightly. Dad leaned in sharply. "Turn that thing off. Show some respect." But the phone buzzed again, and this time it was a call. Her name lit up the screen in bold white letters. I hesitated, then stepped out of the line, heart pounding. The gym grew unsettlingly quiet as I slipped to the aisle. Somehow, everyone sensed something was happening. I answered. Elena? What's? Her voice exploded through the speaker, loud enough for the front 2 rows to hear. IT launched. Mira, the IPO launched early. My breath caught. What? And it hit 6 billion. 6 billion. The last 2 words left her mouth in a shriek of joy that echoed across the wooden floor. Silence swallowed the gym. You could have heard a pin drop, or a life change. I felt hundreds of eyes burning into me. The students, the professors, my friends. All staring. The dean paused mid-sentence. The microphone squeaked. Somewhere in the back row, someone whispered, 6 billion. My father's face turned to stone. He stood slowly, staring at me like he was seeing a ghost. His lips parted, but no words came. His expression cracked, shock, disbelief, fear, and something deeper, something he'd never shown me before. Regret. Real, stinging regret. I swallowed, unable to look away from him. Yes, I said quietly into the phone. We did it. Dad stumbled toward me. You have a company? He whispered, voice barely holding together. A $6 billion one, I said. And I built it without your help. A murmur spread across the gym like wildfire. He stared, wounded, almost desperate. Mira, why didn't you tell me? I held his gaze for the first time without flinching. Because you told me I'd never be anything without you. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Not anger. Not pride. Just the realization that he had underestimated me so profoundly, he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. The world knew my name now. But that moment, watching him finally see me, felt like the true beginning. And the sweetest justice of all. The moment after the gym erupted in whispers and phone flashes, the air between Dad and me felt heavier than any auditorium ceiling. He had finally seen me, not as a little girl, not as a disappointment, not as someone who needed rescuing, but as the person I had always been, the person he never believed could exist. He approached slowly, each step measured, almost cautious, as if he were afraid that the ground might give way beneath him. His eyes, which had always seemed so certain, now flickered with a strange mix of fear and wonder. Mira, his voice was small, hesitant, the kind of voice a man uses when he realizes he's lost control. Sweetheart. I had no idea, how did you? I didn't let him finish. There was no need. His stammering revealed everything. He was speechless. Defenseless. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, the power dynamic had shifted entirely. I took a deep breath, feeling years of anger, disappointment, and longing converge into one steady, controlled pulse. Dad, I said, keeping my voice calm but firm, I built this life without your help. Every late night, every setback, every failure, you told me I'd collapse. You said I'd never make it. And you know what? I didn't just survive. I thrived. He swallowed hard, the words sinking in slowly. Mira. I didn't mean. Stop, I interrupted, not angrily, but with that gentle finality that leaves no room for argument. Don't apologize. Not now. And not in the way you think. My success isn't a weapon. It's proof that I am not the girl you tried to make me. Not the one who needed you to step in, not the one who would shrink under your expectations. He flinched slightly, but I continued, each word a careful strike of clarity and release. You taught me something, Dad. You taught me exactly what I never want to be. That lesson is invaluable. And I don't hold it against you. I just don't need you anymore. His shoulders slumped. The armor he always wore had dissolved. He finally looked like a human being instead of a judge. For a moment, he opened his mouth again, but this time I didn't wait for him to speak. I stepped aside. Because my life was no longer about proving anything to him. It was about embracing the people who had believed in me, the team that stayed with me through sleepless nights and broken dreams, the students who relied on Nova Bridge, and the countless unknown faces we were about to change. I smiled softly, a smile that had taken years to grow free of fear. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" he whispered, almost afraid to hear my answer. "For showing me who I'm not. For forcing me to fight for everything on my own. And for making me understand my own strength, before anyone else could define it for me." He nodded slowly, a mix of pride and shame reflecting in his eyes. I didn't linger. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My revenge wasn't loud, or cruel, it was quiet, elegant, and final. It was the life I had built, the empire I had earned, and the freedom I now carried like sunlight in my chest. I walked toward my team, toward the waiting cameras, toward the future I had carved with my own hands. Behind me, Dad watched, finally seeing me, finally understanding that the little girl he thought was helpless had grown into someone unstoppable. And for the first time I felt complete. I was free. I was powerful. I was mine. And that was worth more than $6 billion.